Good day. This is Brian Nash from How We Got Here Genealogy, and I'm welcoming you all to the live stream this week on How We Got Here Genealogy, our Genealogy Happy Hour. Just checking in, seeing how things are going. So, as always, if you have a question, you can post it in the comments, but it's a little more detailed question. You go ahead and use a link in the description of this video. In fact, it's in most of my videos. If you have a chance to, if you have a question, a genealogy, family tree, family history question, go ahead and ask it using that link, and I'll try to answer it in a future live stream or in a future video. So today's question, actually one I've had similar questions to. It is one. It's about how come it's so hard to find someone. Well, basically, it's hard to find some of my Scottish relatives because they wind up they have the same name repeated generation after generation. So I have a little bit about Scottish naming. That's conventions that are pretty common. And it's actually, you'll find a similar one for Irish people, but it's why you get a lot of repeated names. So I'm just going to bring that up here 1 second here. I thought I had it ready to go, but I didn't. There we go. This is it, I think. And I actually just made myself a little chart because I can tell you why that this can be useful too in helping you find some of your Scottish relatives. But for now, let's just basically talk about this, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So I'm going to share this with you. And so this here is the Scottish naming conventions. Make this larger here. Let's increase that font. And the reason I have it in this spreadsheet, it's really, it's a good thing that if you have certain patterns of people to find, how you can find out what maybe a father's name, a grandfather's name, or a grandmother's name you could be looking for. That's how I use it, but it's actually, it's just for people to better understand why names are repeated. So let's start. So order on the left side here, you'll see the numbers 1 through 14. I'm assuming that's a big family. That's probably the largest most family. You'll find some that are larger, but that should do most people's inquiries. So how it works is that the first child is usually named after the paternal grandfather. So if the paternal grandfather's name was Andrew, you would think that would be the first son's name. So that should be their potential name in here. And now potential spouse name, the reason is once you start looking at records, if you want to, I have that there. So if you're looking at people and you're trying to determine if it's the right one, because you could on the same thing, you could have, if you're looking at your the daughter side, you can look at your grandmother's name. Say if you're trying to find your second great grandmother's mother's name and father's name, it would give you a little bit of a thing, because you could take one of the sons from there and then one of the daughters. Especially if you have, this works best when you have a group of people their birth orders, and this is why actually even you can use this to help determine the birth order sometimes as well. If you have a group of people and you don't know their dates, I've used it to determine which one is older and younger, which gives me a pointer to where to look for records. And so if my paternal grandfather's name was Andrew and I was Scottish, then if my name was Andrew, I would expect that to be my paternal grandfather's name. And again, the real name potential names here are just the potential name would be if I'm finding somebody. So I have what the real name is if I know it. So the second child, they'd be named after the maternal grandfather. That's the second male child. So I have the similar thing for females, but it's a little bit different in the orders that they go. So if my maternal grandfather's name was Robert, I would expect the second grandson in this family to be named Robert. And then if my father's, this is where it starts to get a little contrived. My father's name would be the third son would be named after. So if my dad's name was James, I'm just trying to use some Scottish names here. If the third son in the family was James, then that would, and my father's name was James, the third son would be named after him. So the reason I have it listed here is it's very particular, because I didn't want to just say your great grandfather or your paternal great grandfather. I want to make sure it's clearly understood your father's name. Now this is where you get some of where you can get some of the repeat patterns. So for instance, if my if I was, for instance, named Andrew, and that's my paternal grandfather, and my paternal grandfather happened to be the third child born in his family, his father's name would be Andrew. So that's sort of where you can get those duplicate names and why you see them repeating. Besides the fact there were very common names on both maternal and paternal sides a lot of times. So this is kind of where you get into that, and you're looking, you can see where those duplicates come from. I know that in my own family, I mean, Andrew that I'm using for an example, in generations between mine and between my mother's generation and the first one to come to Cape Breton in the 1820s, there were, I believe, 14 Andrews along the way, just as direct descendants of the original Andrew ancestor. And you would see that, like, because if so basically, if my father's name was Andrew, let's go, my father's name was James because I was a third born son. Now my son, if I had a son, and I was looking, if my father's name was James, and I had a son, and he was named James, that would mean he was the third born son. If he was this second firstborn son, he would be named Andrew. And so if his, now how it would work is his son, if he was a fourth born son, would be named after his father's father, which again you could get in that repetition, and it goes down here. You'll see it's geared towards, other than the second one where you're named after your maternal grandfather, it's geared towards the father, and then the father's father's father, and then the mother's father's father. And again, the reason I say that instead of maternal, I want to make it very clear which one it is, because when you get to the next one, you have your father's mother's father. And then basically between the next four would be one of the fourth great grandfathers, and on the father side, so you have 8 great grandparents on each side of your family. So you're you have 4 of those, so it would be one of those names. Now with daughters, it's very similar. And again, I'll just make this a little larger so let me read there. So the same thing. So if the mother's the maternal grandmother, but it takes sort of a little precedence on the mother. So the third female child would be named after their mother. So if their mother's name was Elizabeth and they were the third daughter, their name would be Elizabeth as well. Again, this can get you into repeated names. You can, and like I said, why I have sort of here on my chart potential names and potential spouses is because if I'm looking through that, and for instance, if I was looking for my second great grandfather's family and I wanted to know who I should be looking for, I could take a look at my second great grandfather, and I could be taking a look at his different. If I knew he was a certain child born, I would know. So if he was the third child born, I would know. Sorry, if he was a second child born, I'd be able to tell that his paternal grandfather was named, in this case, Robert. But if I was looking at a female and my second great grandmother, and I want to know what her mother's name was, and I knew she was the second child born. So if I knew she was the second child and she was named, if she was named Martha, then I would expect that my paternal grandmother, her name would be Martha. So that would give me the spouse's name. And so then if I'm looking in, say, censuses, other records where I'm trying to find marriage records, or I don't know those names, I can have some sort of a guesswork where to start looking. So it's basically very simple, and I've used this practically in things when like I said, I'm researching my own family name. If I here's one that I've used myself when I'm starting to find out things, and again, it gives me because I know them. I can sort of figure out where people are. So this is one particular line I'm looking for. I knew the different sons' names, so I was able to see different people here. So in this case here, this paternal grandfather, I knew his name was Andrew, and I was able to determine that from my records, but I was able to figure out things by taking one particular ancestor and then naming it and then working it up through the line. Because I would know my on my father's I should continue to have Andersons. So again, this isn't me looking. This is me looking from one of my ancestors to try to find more ancestors. That would leave me a little to be there. So this here one, it was James, and that was the father. And I was expecting to find a The father of this individual, his name was Andrew, and I was expecting James to be the father's name, and it wasn't when my actual record. So that tells me one of two things, is that I could be looking at this wrong, and I could have a I could have something, yeah, like I said, completely wrong. But this is sort of the normal names patterns. It's not a hard rule, a fast rule but it's a good one to find out. Again, this is here. I just basically took the different children and put in their names, and so in this case here, I have an Andrew, a John, a James, George, a William, and Robert, and I was looking to go through and what their potential names are, and then see if I can find them anywhere. There's only 6 sons in that family, so that was all I was going to find. But there was also $7. So when I put the $7 in, I was actually able to follow this through, and then as I go through, I would be able to see if that's those are matching up. And again, by taking these two charts, for instance, this one here, when I'm looking at the father's father, mother is Jane. So if I was looking for the father's father, I would look at what a 4th son, if there was one, in this case there was, it was George. So I could be looking for a Jane and a George Anderson to be my father's father, so my paternal grandfather, my paternal grandparents to be George and Jane Anderson, and that gives me a little bit of spot to look for when I'm going through records and trying to find people that could be matches. And that's pretty much all I had to do for today. It's a really quick live stream. I don't know if there's any questions. If there's not, what I'm going to do is say goodbye. And if you're watching this on repeat, leave a comment or a question leave a question in the comment section, and I'll try to answer you in a future live stream or video. Until next week, keep searching for your ancestors, and you have yourself a grandiose day.
Things change. Farewell, my friend. Things change. Farewell, my friend. Farewells, they're not for